This episode of Taliesin Evitel is scripted and edited just like all our videos, but it's filmed in front of a live studio audience, so they could laugh at me in real time. Hello, Internet! Taliesin here, and with the official 10.0 reveal just days away, it is time for us to unveil our official new expansion predictions video, where we will attempt to predict the future, like, I don't know, maybe a bronze dragon or something. And make some educated guesses as to what the next expansion will be in terms of setting, story, systems, and exciting new features. And look, you know I hate talking about this, okay? You know I hate bringing it up, but for videos like this, it is kind of relevant to mention that time when we predicted pretty much the whole of BFA, including Kultiris and Zandalar being new zones split between Horde and Alliance leveling, island expeditions, allied races we predicted, and not just Ashara and Nazoth, but the exact patches where each of them turned up. And you might say, Taliesin, you can't just constantly dine out on that one time you did some lucky guesses years ago for the rest of your life. How did Tinkers work out for you, Taliesin? Or all those faction changes? Or crafted artifacts? Or class skins? And yeah, okay, that is a fair point. But honestly, my philosophy when it comes to all of this stuff is that the only thing more fun than being right about new expansion predictions is being hilariously wrong. So join us as we prepare to have lots of fun and get out the new expansion reveal bingo card all ready for the April the 19th announcement and see how much we can nail. And obviously, spoiler warning, because I'm always right about everything, so anything I say in this video is basically a spoiler, okay? Go, 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 go. Dragon Isles. Yes, make sure you're sitting down with no sharp implements nearby and a nice cold glass of water on hand, because what I'm about to say will shock you. But I think the next expansion is going to be Dragon Isles themed. This isn't really a prediction, of course, as the name of 10.0, Dragonflight, definitely appears to have been accidentally leaked by Blizzard themselves on their World of Warcraft webpage, which is certainly something, isn't it? And definitely gives a prediction video like this a bit of a different dimension, doesn't it? And the truth is, of course, that most people in the community have been identifying Dragon Isles as the destination for the next expansion for absolutely ages now. I actually predicted it as a later patch in what turned out to be Shadowlands in our 9.0 predictions video. So clear were the hints back in BFA that Rathian was on a mission to find them. Personally though, the moment that I became convinced that Dragon Isles would be the next full WoW expansion was back in October 2021 with the release of the sun-warmed feline mount on the store, which might seem like a weird kind of confirmation, right? But I don't know, something about the uniqueness of that model just really made me think that it had originally been designed to be used in an expansion. And you know, where do you find massive kittens? The Dragon Isles, of course. It makes perfect sense, as I will explain later. But yes, obviously, I think it's going to be Dragon Isles, but what do I think that means? Well, like most people, I can imagine the Isles being broken into zones corresponding to the main Dragonflights, one for red, green, blue, and bronze, making up the leveling zones, with the black Dragonflight zone being the max level area. That scenario takes about as much imagination as Belialar's headline writer, and it's so obvious that surely Blizz wouldn't do it, right? Right? If I were in charge of the expansion, I'd have the island populated by a bunch of ancient dragons who absolutely look down on the plebby Titan-empowered humanoid mimicking dragonflights and who see themselves as the pure-blood master race that deserve to inherit the globe in the wake of the others losing their immortality and a huge chunk of their borrowed power back in Cataclysm. That's what I'd do. And also, I'd make the new player hub literally the Wandering Isles, as in, I would have that giant turtle take us to the Dragon Isles, then park up on the beach, and that would be this expansion's Dalaran. And I can still hope for something surprising like that, but for now, I'm going to base my predictions on the one Dragonflight per zone idea, mostly because it fits rather handily with another prediction, that Covenants will be making the move over to Dragonflight in the form of players joining forces with one of the Dragonflights. I think Covenants in Shadowlands have ended up at a point now where most players kind of enjoy them. Is that fair to say? I think with further iteration, it's a system I honestly wouldn't mind making a return in 10.0. So, I think Dragonflights will have no or negligible player power attached to them. They will be easily swappable, and the rewards that they do give will be purely cosmetic, so transmogs, mounts, and possibly spell effects if we're really lucky, something like that. They are essentially just 5 convoluted bars to fill in during the course of the entire expansion, and if I had to predict how they would work in terms of leveling story, which I kind of do, it's kind of the entire point of the video, then I'd say that you arrive on the Dragon Isles and get to the hub area. You pick your Dragonflight from red, green, blue, or bronze straight away, and that is the flight that you remain a member of until you hit max level and complete the leveling campaign, at which point you are given the freedom to change at will. I think there will be a universal AP style currency that won't be called AP, even though it could totally be called AP with aspect power, but there's just like no way that Blizz are going to call the main currency AP for a 4th expansion in a row, right? Like, there's no way. And I think that that not AP currency will again not have any real player power value. It is used to upgrade your chosen Dragonflight team hub, unlock transmogs and pets and mounts. It'll have a shared pool so that your current total stays the same when you swap flights. And after Zereth Mortis, I can see some of that currency being used to give yourself open world buffs for questing and stuff too. I think the only meaningful non-cosmetic result of your initial flight choice will be in the leveling campaign story, because I predict it will be different depending on your choice. Like, I think it will be broadly the same overarching narrative, but say blue flight players will begin in a different zone to green flight players, with a different route through the other zones as they level, before all the stories kind of come together in the max level black Dragonflight zone at the end. And of course, because flights are simple to change, it's easy to go back and see the other stories later, all on one character. But that's why you're locked into your choice for the duration of the initial campaign. Furthermore, I think the Black Dragonflight will become available in 10.1 as another 5th Covenant choice with their own collectibles and aesthetics, with the potential for even more Dragonflight Covenants to come as the expansion goes on. Maybe the Netherwings or Infinite Dragonflight, or a whole new bunch that we've never even heard of yet. That initial main hub that I mentioned, by the way, obviously I want it to be the Wandering Isles, but assuming that it's not, the equivalent of Oribos or Dalaran, I'm predicting that it will be in the green Dragonflight zone. And it's a weird thing to even predict, but I'm just saying it because we know that the collector's edition mount is an emerald green Drake. And also because I think that's the zone most likely to be filled with big, beautiful, cuddly kittens. So I think that's where we're going to head first. The Emerald Dragonflight are heavily connected to the Emerald Dream, right? So it makes sense for their zone to be like kind of a Galapagos Islands of sorts. Loads of old and uniquely evolved beings that don't exist anywhere else on Azeroth. I don't really want to take a guess at the plot beyond Rathian being like incredibly pushy and trying to get the gang back together and heal the Isles. Maybe some dragons have like an evil plan to regain their power. Maybe Murazond and Galacross will make an appearance, sure, but I'd like to throw in the wild cards of Blood Elf Orphan Salandria, who Horde players take around in Children's Week. And when you take her to the Caverns of Time, the guards attack her until Zaladormu stops them and says she will not be punished for the things she might do or fail to do in the future. Later on in that quest, when she gets given a toy dragon, she says, "Someday I plan to own a real one." There's a coin in the Wrath Dalaran fountain called Salandria's Shiny Copper Coin with the flavor text, "Someday I'm gonna be more powerful than all of these mages," which isn't ominous at all. Oh, and also in patch 9.2.5, there are some new Blood Elf Heritage Armor quest lines where you quest with Salandria because she's all grown up now and a trainee Blood Knight. Keep an eye on this one, that's all I'm saying. And with the predicted setup of the expansion out the way, let's get down to the really fun bit. New features. Permanent time walking. My first big feature prediction for 10.0 is permanent time walking. I think with BFA, Legion, and WoD dungeons being added to the Mythic Plus rotation in Season 4 of Shadowlands, and with the Mage Tower being up full time too, then making time walking a permanent feature rather than a cycling event is the next obvious step. Make old content relevant has become something of a mantra for the player base in the last year or so. Blizzard have shown that they are willing to take the first baby steps towards that. All in all, it just seems like an easy, crowd-pleasing win. for relatively little development time. I know loads about how you make a video game, relatively little development time. And an expansion where the bronze Dragonflight seem likely to feature pretty heavily would be the perfect time to make such a change, don't you think? There's a few different forms that permanent time walking could take, of course, and I feel like the most likely is that time walking raids are constantly available, and that individual time walking events would add a selection of that X-Bax dungeons to the Mythic Plus rotation, just like we saw with Legion time walking in Shadowlands. Now, I would have it so that, say, time walking events happen for 2 or 3 weeks each, and there's always one up. So you have a couple of weeks where Legion dungeons were added to the Mythic Plus pool, then a couple of weeks where it was BFA dungeons, then a couple of weeks of Cataclysm dungeons, etc. And not just Mythic Plus, of course. Normal time walking group finder would still be working for time walking dungeons at those times too. In an ideal world, the time walking tokens that players would get from those dungeons and raids could be spent at vastly better stocked time walking vendors who sell all of the armor and weapon transmogs of that expansion, and hopefully some unused models from the files too, something that felt awesome when we got the Nightborn glowy weapons with Legion time walking. So we are talking potentially hundreds of transmogs and weapons on the vendor to earn at your leisure. Just the kind of thing that players have been crying out for. Just the kind of thing that Blizzard need to be making part of this game. Could we get classic time walking too? Yes! Classic dungeons would be absolutely part of that list. Are you ready for the next prediction? Path of the Curator. So leveling characters from scratch for new and veteran players alike always comes in for a bit of stick, and understandably so. Since WoD or even Mists, it really has felt like an incoherent mess of leaping between expansions, out-leveling areas before you're done with them, and never really having a consistent story thread throughout the experience. Well, I think that is set to change in 10.0. Actually, it's easy to forget how much leveling has changed for the better in each of the last 2 expansions anyway, with first level scaling in the BFA pre-patch, and then Chromie time going into Shadowlands. As an experience, it is objectively head and shoulders better than what has come before. And I think a third iteration for 10.0 is all that's needed to make it the experience that I think the devs always wanted it to be in the first place. Before Shadowlands released, we made a video about Chromie time and how massive leap forward though it was, it didn't quite achieve what I think it meant to. Choosing one specific expansion to level through is a great idea. Making new players go through the most recent expansion first is also a good idea, but some of the same old problems remained. You didn't really level through Legion, did you? You leveled through the first couple of zones of Legion. You started a big adventure that you never finished before being forcibly yoinked out at level 50 and thrown into Shadowlands, whether you liked it or not. You didn't really level through Wrath. You leveled through like a zone and a half of Wrath before it was Shadowlands time. The experience was more coherent, but still frustrating and unsatisfying, and the alternative that we suggested in this video was something called the Path of the Curator, a shield quest curated path through each individual expansion and the entire story of your chosen expansion. So in Legion's case, it would take in the leveling zones, the Broken Shore, and Argus, with versions of important boss fights from the raids along the way, using computer-controlled party members, just like the dungeon at the end of the new starting area, Exile's Reach. With the majority of XP coming from completing the Path of the Curator, dinging 50 as the Lich King is vanquished, or Argus is defeated, or whatever it was that happened at the end of BFA, would make for a leveling experience far more in keeping with the modern and welcoming MMO that WoW is clearly trying to be. And I think, again, what better time to make the final iteration on Chromie time than the Dragonflight expansion, right? Oh, and I say ding 50, but actually, I don't know. Lots of people assuming that Blizz will keep the level cap at 60 and lower everyone down to level 50 again for the start of the new expansion. And they might, like, that wouldn't be surprising, I guess, but I don't think they will. I think the level cap will go up to 70 and scaling will be altered so that the Path of the Curator, or whatever much better name they come up with, would take you to 60 and ready for Dragonflight fun times. New class. Okay, so I Don't think there's going to be a new class this expansion. Maybe a new race? They're so easy to add now that sure, why not? A new race. But class, I just don't personally see it. WoW has already got lots of classes, and I love it when an X-Pack has a new class because it makes it feel extra special. All my favorite X-Packs have new classes, but the problem is a new class isn't just for Christmas, fam. It is a commitment to extra work, balancing, coming up with new abilities every X-Pack, designing new tier sets and bonuses forever. I don't think Blizz want that headache, frankly, but I think what we will get is a new approach to character customization, which at its best could feel like a new class. Best case scenario, this takes the form of something like class skins. Something we've talked about on this channel and on this stream lots in the last couple of years, the option to change the appearance and spell effects as well as the icons and names for specific class race combos that currently don't really make sense. So, for example, it makes zero sense in my opinion that Lightforged Draenei can be Shadow Priests. Wouldn't it be cool if there was a class skin for Lightforged Shadow Priests that made all of their abilities light themed? Kind of like the Green Fire quest for Warlocks, but on a much grander scale. It would actually be very cool if they had short allied race style quest lines to unlock them. So you could have a skin for Kultiran Shaman that made all their abilities water themed to make them Tide Sages, like they should be. Night Elf Holy Priests could have all of their light abilities made astral themed to be Priestesses of the Moon. Taking it further, any Demonology Warlock could become a Necromancer simply by replacing their summoned demons with various skeletons and Scourge and undead friendos. And yes, this could also include Dark Ranger options for, I don't know, Forsaken Hunters and Rogues, Blood Elf Hunters and Rogues, don't forget Night Elf Hunters and Rogues. But I do predict that Dark Ranger options are going to be a thing in 10.0 one way or another. So if we don't get the best case class skins idea, I can see them simply adding them as not quite standard customization options. And if you're doing that, if you're crossing into Dark Ranger territory just by making a normal character, then heck, there is nothing to stop you adding other options that maybe Blizz would have shied away from in the past, like the long-awaited Eredar option for Draenei, Gilblins for Goblins, you know, the kind of thing. Maybe there will be an expansion of the glyph system that lets players customize their ability appearances that way. Whatever happens, I think players will be leaping around as beautiful, sexy, red-eyed Dark Rangers before this expansion is done. That is my prediction. Cross-faction guilds. I'm not sure if this will be a box feature, but I think at some point in the next expansion, cross-faction guilds will obviously become a thing. With cross-faction play arriving in 9.2.5, the expansion itself, after launch when the dust has settled, seems like a good time to expand it to include guilds too. I don't think there's any doubt that it will need to happen eventually, and I think it'll end up being a Dragonflight thing. That was a short one. World Revamp. I don't think there's going to be a huge world revamp. I don't think there's going to be like a big time skip that sees us transported years into the future or a cataclysmic event that changes the face of the world, but I think it makes sense that Blizzard will continue the slow work that they started in BFA of updating individual old zones as and when they are used in the story, like they did with Stromgarde and Darkshore. What I would like, if they're going to do that, is for any changes to be a bit more expansion neutral. Nothing dates a zone rework quicker than a very obvious and specific story setting. It's why so many Cataclysm reworked zones don't look great now, and both the BFA zones suffer from it as well. Like, oh no, Tyrande is the Night Warrior, what are we gonna do? Yeah, I'd like the updates to be mostly visual. We know that something is happening to Lordaeron, and there have been new Elwyn Forest buildings in the code for absolutely ages now, so those seem like pretty good starting points to me. What about Undercity? I'm glad you asked, friends. Player housing. This is something that pops up every expansion predictions video, and I kind of hold the philosophy that if I always say it's not coming, then I'm always far more likely to be right. And that is true for Dragonflight. I think in my heart of hearts, really, truly, I don't believe that there will be player housing this expansion. But then there's just this tiny little voice in the back of my mind, and that voice is doing an Ian Hazzikostas impression, and it's saying there will be player housing in Dragonflight. And what's the point of videos like this if we don't allow ourselves a little bit of big juicy hopium huffing action? So you know what? Yes, this is the expansion where we get player housing. Fine, why not? In all seriousness, I think it's kind of make or break right now when it comes to WoW and housing. There's a sense that it needs to be now so much that it surely must be now. It must be planned for 10.0. And yeah, sure, why not? Housing and all the new crafting options that would bring. I've always thought that if WoW was going to have housing, then the Elder Scrolls Online model is probably the best fit for this game, where there are certain properties available around the world which everyone can have their own phase of and fill with whatever they like. And there's a part of me that thinks that there's a fantastic narrative angle to adding housing in this way too. What if the very first properties available in the game are in Lordaeron for the Horde and Teldrassil for the Alliance? What if player housing is framed as a rebuilding effort to replace what was lost in the Fourth War, with the players doing their part and being a literal player in that rebuilding, and then other spaces in other zones becoming available as the expansion goes on and forever afterwards? That's a best case scenario. Do I think it will really happen? Maybe don't ask me that. Ask me if I think Blizz will meet us halfway and instead introduce guild housing in Dragonflight. Well, actually, maybe don't ask me that either. But fine, yeah, okay, sure. I think they are going to do guild housing instead of player housing. Whatever, fine. That's my prediction. That's definitely what I think will happen. Guild housing. New philosophy. One of the things I'm most looking forward to finding out about Dragonflight is not really a feature at all, but more a philosophy. With all the issues that Shadowlands had, and with the drop in sub numbers, accompanied by the harassment and discrimination revelations, creating something of a perfect storm of shitness around 9.1, if Blizz staff are to be believed, then Team 2, who make WoW, had something of a reckoning at that time, which ended up with lots of talk about a new philosophy and direction for the game. One that was more open and user-friendly, respected the player's time more, and offered more options and freedom than we might expect. And yeah, sure, so X for doubt, right? I think that would be a reasonable response. But I think if we look at everything that has come since 9.15 with the opening up of the Covenants, uncapping Torghast rewards, bringing back the Mage Tower and other big quality of life changes, and then 9.2 with Zereth Mortis being an absolute banger with very open and friendly systems like the Creation Catalyst, so everyone can get tier sets, and now 9.2.5 with its innovations on the making a new tier where all the expansion's raids are made relevant, and also it looks like there's a deterministic currency for upgrading gear through normal, heroic and mythic levels. I don't know, it's not a revolution, but it's ample evidence that the devs weren't joking when they said that they were taking a new approach. And I think most of us want to see that continue in Dragonflight. Now, exactly how much progress will be account-wide? How much will we have to repeat on alts? If I work really hard to unlock everything for the blue Dragonflight on my main, will I be greeted with an empty, not upgraded blue Dragonflight base when I log in with my warrior? Will we continue to see improvements in the Great Vault and tier set acquisition, or will there be something else, even smoother? My prediction, based solely on the evidence, is that Blizzard will surprise us a little with how open they make Dragonflight systems from the very start. And whereas I don't think we're going to reach what I consider to be the ideal, where essentially the only thing players ever need to do with an ult is to level them and to gear them, and all other progress being account-wide, I think Dragonflight will be making noticeable steps in that direction. It's not a flashy feature or prediction, it wouldn't get the thumbnails and the headlines, and it's something that we won't really be able to get a good feeling of until the expansion launches. But for the future of the game, it might just be the most important reveal of all. So I will be paying very close attention. And I almost forgot, there's going to be like a Torghast thing, but it'll be just boss fights and maybe puzzle rooms. Basically like Torghast meets the Mage Tower meets the Crystal Maze. And it'll be set in the Emerald Dream. And actually a whole patch will be set in the Emerald Dream. And actually the expansion will end with Azeroth being born and destroying the entire planet. But nothing changes for us because we got a new Azeroth from the Emerald Dream, which is exactly the same same as Azeroth now, but Azeroth is born now, and she's a troll, obviously, and the cinematic shows her in space with the Silitus sword in her chest, and she's all like, "Roar," and she pulls it out, and that's her weapon. It's the sword from her chest. I guess you'd call this the wildcard section. This is the wildcard section, okay? But what do you think? Do my predictions sound like the kind of thing you're expecting, or am I totally wrong, though, and missing the very obvious hints, like right in front of my face, though? Are you watching this video after the reveal on the 19th, and you're just here to laugh at me? That would be fair. I probably deserve it. Whatever, let us know in the comments below. And thanks for joining us today. If you like this video, don't thank us, thank our patrons who give their actual real-life money to make all of our work happen. And seriously, guys, thank you, because without you, there'd be a whole lot less Taliesin Evitel. We will be recording a special patron Q&A the day after the reveal just for you. And you might even see Evitel's boobs, because she's just like constantly feeding a baby right now. Baby loves the booba. If you didn't like it, downvote the shit out of it. And remember, my name is Lawmaster Fana. No, my name is Taliesin from me and Evitel and Penny and Anirin too. Until next time, cheerio!